Well, hi there. It's Monday the 15th of July 2024, and on this rather wet afternoon I've come to Caerwent. So Caerwent's Roman name was Venta Silorum. At this point you are just inside the west gate of the Roman town of Venta Silorum, market town of the Silures. Lying astride the Roman road from Gloucester to Caerleon and the west, it was founded soon after AD 75. Initially, the settlement here was scattered and its buildings mostly of wood. Later on, Venta had a planned grid of streets, dividing the town into 20 rectangular plots with public buildings, shops and houses, all in stone, although the plan did not reach its final form until AD 200. Venta was the largest Roman civilian settlement in Wales, covering 45 acres, and was eventually granted the status of administrative capital of the Silures, a British tribe whose pacification had cost the Romans 25 years of fighting. Later in the 2nd century, the town was enclosed by earth and timber defences. About 100 years later, a stone wall and ditch were constructed outside the earlier earth rampart, and by AD 350 stone towers had been added along the north and south aisles. The Roman town walls that still encircle modern Caerwent are the best preserved in Britain. The main road through the village still corresponds to the Roman east to west road, but most other indications of Roman layout are long buried. Excavations here from 1855 onwards have revealed much of the plan, however, and areas open to view are indicated here. The town walls and other remains are now in the care of Cadder. Okay, see if I can get my leg over this old stile. Oh, well, that wasn't too bad. Here we are then. Look at these for remains of the Roman town wall. Brilliant. Well, you may be thinking, why on earth am I filming out in this weather? Well, I'm here. And the thing is, I'm not going to be in this area tomorrow, so I either do this today whilst I can, or it just doesn't get done. And so I can't just nip back any time and do this film, because obviously I live a long way from Caerwent now. Anyway, we'll see what we can do. Luckily it's not a long walk today anyway. So, this is part of the West Gate. This western gateway was one of 4 access points to the Roman town of Venta Silorum. Its double-arched openings were flanked by rectangular towers. The town was not enclosed by defences until the late 2nd century AD. At first, these were of earth and timber, but about 100 years later, the gates were rebuilt in masonry, and a stone wall and ditch were constructed outside the original earth rampart. The east and west gates controlled the main thoroughfare through the town, and were larger than those to the north and south. Yuck. Good old British weather, eh? Well, this morning I did my Rock, Sudbrook and Caldicot Castle walk. It wasn't a particularly long walk and I'd finished it in good time, so I thought, well, I've got time to pop over here to Caerwent and just do this short walk. It's just unfortunate that since I've arrived here that the heavens have opened and it's been a complete washout. Oh well, never mind. As I say, I may as well whilst I'm here, because I'll be gone by tomorrow and I won't get the chance to do this walk again. But anyway, we'll see. Hopefully I might, the rain might ease off a bit in a minute if I'm lucky. Oh, Yes! There's still a bit of rain, but it's died off a little bit, so I'll make the most of that. It's amazing really, these walls. There's so much to see here. Caerwent itself as a village is very small, so if you drive through it you might be forgiven for thinking there's nothing to see here, but there's lots to see. Yeah. An old Roman town, and these walls are amazing, even though they're ruins now. It's just fascinating to see all this. Yeah. I have noticed on some of these signs that there is information that seems to be repeated on other signs, so forgive me if I seem to be reading out what's already been mentioned, but I'll just read what it says. South wall. The 2nd century town defences had been of earth and timber. Before AD 300, this stone wall was built outside the earlier rampart, and 50 years later the defences were reinforced by stone towers built against the north and south walls. The wall here survives to a height of 17 feet, but would have stood half as high again, pierced only by the single-arched south gateway, now blocked up to your right. The towers were hollow, with upper platforms of timber for archers to command the space in front. Oh well, I've had to put my hood on again because the rain's got heavier. Oh well, I'll just have to accept it, unfortunately. Right, get through this gate. Right, okay, we've got a gap here then. So the south wall continues on there, but I'll just see what it says up here on that notice there. Ah, okay, it's only a shortcut to the town centre if people want to use the shortcut. So yeah, that'll just go back into the centre of Caerwent. But I'm going to continue following the path that goes around the south wall. Oh, it's a bit of respite from the rain again. Reached the southeast corner now, so I should be walking beside the east side. This massive mound is known as the Tump. Brilliant. Okay, so I'll just walk along here beside the east gate. East Gate. Here just beside you stood the eastern gateway through the walls of the Roman town of Venta Silorum. Sited astride the main thoroughfare, it had a double archway like the west gate, whereas the north and south gates had single openings. These gateways are not bonded with the main town wall, which is probably the late 3rd century, and maybe earlier in date. Well, I'm in the centre of Caerwent now. There's lots of traffic coming from everywhere. Must be a busy time of the day. Must be the school run or something. Okay, I'll just walk down here then. Reaching the A48, I crossed over for a quick detour into what is now a housing estate, built just south of a former Royal Navy Propellant Factory. The Royal Navy Propellant Factory operated just north of the town from 1939 until 1965, producing explosives. For this, it needed enormous amounts of drinking water, conveniently supplied by pumps draining the Severn Tunnel. Later, the US military stored ordnance here, and it is now used for military and public order training. Crossing back over the A48, I headed along a narrow lane before turning left through a gate. So this is the Forum. What the heck? Impressive, very impressive. Forum Basilica. In this central area of the Roman town stood the marketplace and civic hall, built in the early 2nd century AD. The hall was extensively rebuilt towards AD 300, perhaps because of subsidence. The Forum, a paved rectangular open marketplace, was surrounded with colonnades with shops, taverns and offices on 3 sides, and space for market stalls in the central piazza. It was entered through an archway from the main street to the left. On the 4th side stood the huge Basilica, 260 by 182 feet square. On this site stood a Romano-Celtic Temple. It was built about AD 330, though exactly which deity was worshipped here is unclear. The main building had a raised entrance porch leading into an ambulatory or walkway which surrounded the square inner sanctuary. This was a tower-like structure housing statues and other cult objects, with an alcove to its rear. The temple stood within a sacred courtyard enclosure where worshippers would have stood, and was faced by a long hall fronting the main street. The Church of St Stephen and St Tatham is a parish church with datable origins to the 13th century. It is believed to be one of the oldest Christian sites in the county, and possibly within Wales. It is possible that a very early Christian congregation worshipped at Caerwent in the Roman period, although there is no evidence that this settlement was on the site of the present church. The church was restored in 1893 to 1894, and again in 1910 to 1912 by G.E. Halliday. It remains an active church in the parish of Caerwent and Dinham, and is a Grade 2 listed building. Well, that was a nice bit of respite from the rain. Well, at least I managed to get inside that church. Only just though. I was literally going to walk up to the door, and then this gentleman sort of appeared behind me, and he was the church warden. And he said, "I'm just going to lock up," he said, "but you can just take some pictures quickly before I lock up," he said. So that was very kind of him. So he led me inside, and he actually pointed out things of interest that was worth taking pictures of, so that was really good. So, very kind gentleman. He's just gone off now to meet his grandkids off the bus from school, I think, so. Okay, well, I'm nearly at the end of the walk now, so I'll be glad to get out of this rain, if I'm honest with you. God, it's flipping horrible. Oh well. Anyway, I used to come through Caerwent on the bus a lot when I was living in Chepstow. Now, it was when I first started to learn to play the electronic organ. I used to go for lessons in Newport. Now, it was actually a shop in Newport called Crane's, and that was where my mum got the organ from. So, after buying the organ, I went there for several weeks and travelled to Newport and had organ lessons every Saturday morning. That stopped after a while because I went to, I must admit, a better teacher. She was a better teacher. She lived in Chepstow, and that was Mrs. Duffield. She was great. So yeah, but that was when I first started my travels on the bus. It was when I actually went to Newport on the bus every Saturday morning, and I bought one of these sort of day rider tickets and found that I could travel on the buses all day. They were the buses that sort of took me around places north of Newport. I used to go to Cardiff on the bus, just have a ride after I'd had my organ lesson. I used to go to other places, sort of like, I don't know, Cumbran I remember going to, and sort of places around Newport and Cardiff where that particular bus company travelled to. But also, I later discovered that that same bus company travelled around the Wye Valley and Forest of Dean. So that's how those travels started. So it was all due to my starting having organ lessons in Newport. Oh, what a fantastic piece of family history for me. So there are the remains of Courtyard House. Excavations during 1981 to 1984 uncovered the line of Roman roadways dividing the building plots. These are marked in gravel to your right. They also showed that 3 successive buildings had stood on this site. This area contains 2 groups of Roman buildings. To the right were commercial premises and residential quarters. To the left was a courtyard house, which was exclusively residential. Behind the shops and away from the street stood a large courtyard house constructed in the first half of the 4th century AD. When excavated during 1947 to 55, only 2 wings of the house could be investigated, and it was not possible to identify the precise arrangements. However, one room to the far left had a mosaic pavement and was heated by underfloor hypocaust. Others showed traces of painted plaster. Right, that's it, I'm going. It's been a lovely walk and a nice little walk around Caerwent, but my God, it's been wet. Flipping heck. And as I say, I couldn't have done this tomorrow because I'm going to be elsewhere tomorrow, so as I said earlier, I've got to do this whilst I'm here, otherwise it just won't get done at all, so I'd rather do what I can than not do it. Anyway, it's been a nice short walk really. If it had been a longer walk, I'd have to considerably change my route really, but at least I managed to do what I wanted to do in Caerwent today, so that's been good. Okay, I'm going to get back to my guest house now in Caldicot, the Lich Gate.